Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brownish Parenting on Ruckus Avenue Radio. This show unveils modern Desi parenting topics and explores the latest research for raising our bicultural children. Today, we're going to be exploring the South Asian culture and how to talk to your children about those controversial sex education topics. We're going to explore the best practices from the toddlerhood years all the way through adolescence. We also want to get some pointers for parents who want to start having these conversations with their children. For example, when should they start and how should they go about it? I wanted to note to my listeners that this episode may contain sensitive content, so please make sure you listen to this in a safe and private space. So this leads me to address this question with you all today. Why should parents talk to their children about these sex education topics? Now, in the past, many schools tried the abstinence-only programs, but they didn't work. And these programs were saying not to talk about, dating or healthy relationships or sex, but it didn't work because kids were dating and they were being intimate from an earlier age. Schools realized that it was more effective to provide comprehensive sex education in which they talked about a variety of these topics to help students learn about what it means to be in a relationship and how to make responsible choices when you do decide to be intimate. And so another topic we also want to address for the younger children today is body safety. It's important to talk to young children about body safety and to teach them what are safe touches, unsafe touches, and how to deal with those unwanted touches. A great safety and action plan by childabusepreventionservices.org is no, go, tell. Now, what that means is you say no, you go as far away from them as you can, and then you tell a trusted adult. Typically for South Asians, the hardest part is this tell part because they feel like their parents may not believe them or they don't want to get that person in trouble. We also know that children living in America are dating earlier than before, so we need to make sure that they know what a healthy relationship looks like. A recent Associated Press article in 2022 reported on the wrongful death lawsuit that was filed by the mother of Yeardley Love. Now, this article describes a girl who was living out her dreams. In her 9th grade essay, she writes that she wanted to be a lacrosse player for the University of Virginia. She wanted to become a lawyer and to maintain close relationships with family and friends. Yeardley Love was living out her dream as a UVA lacrosse player, but unfortunately, in May of 2010, when Love was only 22 years old, she was murdered by her boyfriend. She was just weeks away from her graduation. Now, this story just gives me chills. And her family learned during the trial that there were signs that she was in an abusive relationship. From learning more about what those signs are, we can help our children. And their family has created this incredible resource called onelove.org to empower young adults and their parents to know the difference between what it means to be in a healthy and unhealthy relationship. So check out One Love, which is a national leader in preventing relationship violence and abuse. The CDC also reports that 1 in 3 girls in the US is a victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner, a figure that far exceeds rates of other types of youth violence. Now, DoSomething.org also reports that the stats reveal that only a third of those teens that are involved in abusive relationships confided in someone about the violence. And females between the ages of 16 to 24 are 3 times more likely to be abused by an intimate partner. In many cases, violence can happen when teens and young adults don't have those skills to manage that conflict. They don't know how to cope with these intense feelings of jealousy or know how to navigate rejection in their lives. So having these honest conversations about relationships, it's going to help our children know that they're in a healthy relationship. And the number one sex education topic that my students at SJSU stated to me that they wish they had learned about were these characteristics of a healthy versus unhealthy relationship. Now, if parents are not talking about this topic, most of the information they do receive is coming from friends or the media that they consume. Now, this is really concerning because it's the blind leading the blind. No one's getting accurate information about this topic. And this is why this topic is so important. And I wanted to end the intro with some of those signs of what an unhealthy relationship looks like. And on onelove.org, you're going to see lots of graphics on these signs. And example. So please do check that out. The first sign is intensity, right? Rushing the pace of a relationship, needing that constant contact. Then we have possessiveness, jealousy to the point where they want to control you. We have manipulation. This can be very subtle, but trying to get you to do things that you don't want to do, making you feel guilty if you're not doing them. Isolation, isolating you from friends and family. Sabotage, someone purposely ruining your reputation. Belittling, making you feel really bad about yourself. Guilting makes you responsible for their actions. Volatility, that unpredictable reaction that scares you. And then deflecting responsibility, blaming others for their unhealthy behavior. Now, let's pause for a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to our guest, Moushumi Ghose, a sexologist and sex therapist, about how she navigated her career. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We left off talking about why it's important to talk to kids about relationships, and we discussed the 10 signs of unhealthy relationships. I want to emphasize how important it is to have these honest and open conversations. And I want to thank Moushumi Ghose for being here today to help us guide through how to do this in a developmentally appropriate way. I'd like to introduce Moushumi Ghose, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, author, and documentary filmmaker specializing in sexuality. She believes that sexual liberation may be the key to our collective healing. Moushumi has written for various publications, including the Huffington Post, Dame, Men's Health, and appears regularly in the media as an expert on sexuality and relationships. She currently oversees her group practice, Los Angeles Sex Therapy, and certifies sexology coaches in her proprietary course, Pleasure, Psychology, Sexology Training and Certification. So let's get into it. Let's first talk about just being South Asian American. We both went to school in Walnut Creek. We were part of that Bengali Probashi community, Moushumi. And so I just wanted to find out a little bit more about what your experiences were like as a South Asian American growing up, and maybe some of the challenges that you faced.
So I grew up super Americanized. And I just remember being really young. And one of the things that I absolutely was totally frightened about was this idea that, like, I would hear other kids talking about in the Bengali community, but this idea that I was going to have to marry somebody, like an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
And I remember being very young and telling my mom, I will never, ever do that.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, and so I think my parents didn't really talk to me about much, but I made a lot of declarations to them about what I was absolutely not going to do. And I think, my mother actually believed me, right?
Yeah.
She took that to heart, which I feel really grateful for because she never ever forced me
Yeah.
to get married or to date an Indian. Like, I was really, and the reason, as I got older, I kind of like dissected it, and the reason I felt that way was because I felt there was such an imbalance between men and women. So
Mhm.
that was something I observed as a child. When
Wow.
it comes to um, anything else related to anything like sexuality or anything else, because I had made those early on statements, I think my parents just didn't talk to me about anything.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I didn't hear about anything really at all. And I think, and I wonder often, had I not been so, headstrong
Yeah.
and we've, had such a strong voice at such a young age, if my mother would have talked to me more about stuff. But maybe she
Yeah.
just felt like she didn't know what to say. What do you say to a kid who's like, I'll never get married? You know?
Absolutely. I know. I feel like so I definitely got the arranged marriage conversation as well. But I wasn't very vocal with my parents. They were really strict about just me talking back to them and things like that. So, and I will tell you that they just continued to talk about it. They continued to be like, we will find this Brahmin boy for you and when you're of age and all of that. So those were the types of conversations, we had growing up. And so basically they didn't really then talk much about dating, I guess, right? With you.
So they
Yeah.
didn't really, and the interesting thing was is my parents did not have an arranged marriage. My
Uh,
parents actually have a love marriage. So I
oh.
think they
Mhm.
came into this whole scenario with a different idea, a different outlook as a
Yeah.
whole. But it didn't really give them much. They still didn't talk about much. It was
Yeah.
just kind of a known thing. Like my parents had a love marriage. Most of the other Bengali kids, in our group, their parents talked to me about arranged marriage. But
Yeah.
then there was always this like parentheses after that. But your parents had a love marriage, so things might be different for you.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah.
So when you started dating, did you tell your parents, or did you feel like you had to keep it a secret, or were you open with them? Like, did they know?
I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
So my introduction to dating was with these kids outside of my high school in this like different part of town, and there was a lot of sexual exploration going on, and there was a lot of like bisexuality stuff going on and
Mm,
things of that nature.
yeah.
So at my like general high school, I didn't get a lot of my like white, Caucasian friends, they were all dating boys, but I didn't get a lot of interest. And that was probably because I was Indian and everybody else at my school was primarily Caucasian, like maybe a
Yeah.
sprinkling of some Asian kids, but
Hmm.
and so when I started hanging out with this other group of kids, there was a lot more like sexual fluidity and sexual exploration,
Yeah.
which I partook in
Yeah.
and there was no way I was going to tell my parents.
Yes.
No way. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
kept
yeah.
I kept things hidden from them for a pretty long time.
Okay, yeah. So similar, right? Yeah. I basically didn't date until college, but again, just wouldn't have told them. When you started to navigate towards your career, as well, first, if you could just explain the difference between what a sexologist is and a sex therapist. So, yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, sex therapy is the title given to those who practice psychotherapy. So, I'm a licensed psychotherapist, a licensed marriage and family therapist. So, um, sex therapy is sort of the like specialized form of psychotherapy that focuses on sexuality, relationships,
Hmm.
and intimacy, sex, things like that.
Yeah.
Sexologist is a little bit more broad. What happens in school, in academia, you can get a PhD, for example, in human sexuality.
Yeah.
Um, Having a PhD doesn't make you a licensed therapist. You can't necessarily provide therapy. You've got to have um, a therapy license. You've got to have done the education
Yeah.
to become a therapist or become a psychologist. But as a human sexuality major or PhD person,
Yeah.
can't actually call themselves a therapist. So you'll see a lot of
Hmm.
sexologists
I see.
coming. So they have a lot of education
Yeah.
in sexuality, but they have the actual license to practice therapy.
Got it. And they may be in like other fields, maybe like policy
Right.
and yeah,
Policy research,
sex education. Yeah.
right, writing, educating, public speaking, all sorts of things. So they'll call themselves sexologist as opposed to therapist, because therapist is kind of narrow anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering like how you navigated that path, but also in general, just how parents are typically scared to have these conversations with their kids, like we're going to have that sex talk with our kids and talk to them about these topics. I'm wondering if you kind of had to do reverse roles and have to sit your parents down and be like, hey, I'm going to be a sexologist and sex therapist. And because again, you didn't really say that much about dating and all the things that you were doing. So like when you came forward with this, was there like this big talk? There may not have been, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to answer your question, there was no big talk.
Okay.
I remember though my dad asking me, um, what is a sex therapist? And
Yeah.
this is literally what I told him. I said, Dad, it's a marketing tactic.
Yeah.
I said, I'm actually a marriage and family therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
and I work with a lot of couples,
Hmm.
true. And sex therapy is one of the major things that couples have issues with. So it's how I market myself.
Yeah.
And that was it. That
Yeah.
was all I ever said. My parents have never asked me any more questions about it. I
Okay.
published a book. I got published in 2016, and it was a
Oh,
classic sex
yeah.
positions book, which is interesting because of the Kama Sutra, right?
Yeah. What was the
And
title?
it's called Classic Sex Positions Reinvented.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send you a copy, Amita. Don't
Yeah.
you don't let me forget to get your address before we get off the phone.
Yes,
But
I would love a copy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send you a copy. And my mother, no one ever mentioned it ever. I mean, I got a book
Yes,
publishing.
that's what I'm saying. I grew up with you. I just saw your mom. Yes.
I know, and no one
Yeah.
ever mentioned it. And then I will say, I used to shoot my YouTube videos. It used to be called I used to do it. It was the Sex Talk,
Mm.
and from 2012 till about 2020, I filmed a lot of those, and I had a co-host,
Oh,
and that co-host lived in Oakland, and so I was living in sometime I was in LA, and then I also was in New York for some of that time.
yeah.
And I would come home and I would film those sex talk
Yeah.
in my parents' home.
Yeah.
And my mother knew she would welcome my
Yeah.
co-host over, and she was, "Are you guys filming sex talk today?"
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's so cute.
yeah, it became a little bit of a household, thing that we did, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it was never a conversation. Like that, their generation does not have the capacity or the tools
Hmm.
to know how to talk about sex. So we are the first
Yes.
generation, I think, that are like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. We need to do something different. And you have kids, so now you're like,
Yeah.
definitely things need to be a lot
I
different.
know, yeah. That's why, yeah, I just want to be able to like, yeah, open up these doors and these conversations for our kids. And that's interesting that you said that because I remember just when I spoke with your mom like last month, she was telling me, we were talking about this, and I'm like, I love the videos Mo's putting out, like her TikToks or Instagram videos. I'm learning so much. And she's like, yeah, she sends me some of those, but only some, not all of them.
Yeah, we definitely learn when parents are silent, when they don't bring things up, they're actually communicating something pretty big, right? They're telling us, and as teenagers, as kids, we understand that silence means don't bring it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Silence actually it speaks volumes. And growing up in that silence, like not to bring certain things up with your parents. And I think, knowing what I've, learned from you so far, Amita, is that something that you want to change, right?
Yeah.
Like silence, because what silence perpetuates, silence equals violence, essentially. Like when
Mm.
we're uninformed, we can't make choices for ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
we've got to change that narrative. We've got to start having conversations with our kids. And we don't have to be like, oh, let's talk about sex. But I think opening the door and saying, hey, I'm always here for you if you need to talk about anything. No topic is off limits. Come
Yeah.
and talk to me about anything. I also learn things from you. I don't know everything, but I want us to have open conversations about these things. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there too.
It is.
Um,
Yeah. Let's go ahead and take a break. And then when we come back, we are going to address like why South Asian parents have these blocks about the topics. Like why is it so difficult to discuss? So, yeah, I just wanted to now navigate towards the questions related to South Asian parents and why they have so much trouble speaking about sex education topics. I know for my parents, they were just really religious, and they, did send me these messages like that I shouldn't date and dating is wrong and dating is bad, or, you should definitely stay away from boys. Either they said the messages like don't date, and so kids just think it's bad, or they're just really, really nervous about just the word sex. Like when that fifth grade letter came to my house with sex ed on it, I remember how stressed my dad was. Like he had his hands on his head. He was like looking down at this letter. I think he read it like 10 times. because it was a consent form to say, yes, I can learn about these topics at school. What are the blocks like related to this?
Right. So first of all, like traditional families from India, um, there's no sex education, right? And let's look, I want to look first, like historically at arranged marriage. So arranged marriage is, um, it's the coming together of two families, right? It's a business arrangement.
Yeah.
And so the like historically and traditionally Indian families, they are, yes, very religious, of course,
Mhm.
but I think for me, what seems to stand out more is love isn't really a part of the equation.
That's true. Yeah.
Romance isn't a part of the equation.
Mhm.
And sex is only done for procreation, right? Sex is only for the purpose of, extending the family name, merging of the two families, growing, the dynasty of the family,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? That's what arranged marriage is at the end of the day. So there's no, why do you even need to talk about sex? You just do it because you want to, we grew up in a different culture, you and I.
Yeah.
And in our culture, not saying that it's any better, it's different because we have this idea that marriage should also have romance,
Hmm.
love,
Yeah. Yeah.
like love connection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Butterflies and those types of things. So
Yes.
in our culture, we conflate romance, sex, marriage,
Mm,
having
yeah.
children all together.
Hmm.
So that's different for our families, our parents, and how
Yeah.
we're raised in
So
this
just
culture.
like, yeah, socially, how this comes about, right? With, yeah, thinking through marriage, arranged marriages. Cause I'm just, there's like new movies coming out today, like even Bollywood movies. There's one called OMG 2 that really addresses the need for sex education in schools in India, which I think is so great. But a lot of parents just are so uncomfortable with it. Like they're like, I don't want to watch that movie. Like that's not something that I
We're gonna
want to
have to check
see or
it out.
talk about.
Maybe we'll
Uh,
do a screening for our parents, Amita.
So yeah, I'm just like, well, we got to start somewhere. So that's why, like, I have these conversations with people, and I'm like, where, like, at least, like, it's so awesome that this movie is out, and it's a simple movie that has all these topics in it, and it's like funny and it's great, but yeah, I just wanted to, just kind of before we do that, let's go ahead and take a break because we're going to get into the best practices for raising our children and how to start from a young age with these uncomfortable topics. So, welcome back to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue. So, for the next episode, we're going to get into the best practices for raising our children from the toddlerhood years to adolescence. And so, when you're a toddler, that's when you start like learning some of your first words. You start putting words together, like as you move into the preschool years. And so sometimes they typically like may point to their private parts and ask what that is. And so a lot of times parents just make up names or they just think, I don't want to tell my child that's a nipple or that's a penis or, things like that. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about how to tell children about their body parts and what the best practices are.
Yeah, I think that what we model to our kids from a really young age is very important.
Mhm.
So if you're going to model, oh, you're not going to use like the actual word nipple, or you're not going to use penis or vagina, but you're going to use, some sort of cutesy word or, a nickname for it, you are sending a message that you're not comfortable with the actual word.
Yeah.
And the thing that parents often forget is that kids are so smart and so intuitive. Like they know what's going on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they learn that, oh, this is something that is not, I'm not supposed to talk about it. Because if I was, my mom would have told me the real word for it.
Yeah.
Because they learn the real words for things from their friends, from the media, from the world. They're out there living. You can't protect them from learning all of those things. I think the best thing is just to be honest,
Yeah.
right? Like that, this is called a nipple,
Yeah.
this is the type of thing that we cover it. we keep it covered. The nipple we keep covered. If they ask about this is my penis or this is your penis. It's again, this is one of the things that we need to keep covered, but that's what it's called. It's your penis.
Yeah.
Um, and being as honest as you can, even if you feel uncomfortable,
Mhm.
is okay. The other thing I want to say is as a parent, you're going to screw up, and
Mhm.
that's okay too.
Yeah.
You might get totally flustered and be like, I don't know what that's called.
Yes.
Oh
Because I
my God.
remember like your heart
You know,
starts racing and you're
yeah.
like,
And then
and
you
they pick
say
up
the
on it.
wrong thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's going to happen. And you
Yeah.
have to go easy on yourself. You can say the wrong thing and you can model for your child, look, I said the wrong thing. I got
Yeah.
nervous. I get nervous around these topics, but I'm coming back to give you the real information. Like you have the opportunity to correct yourself. And
Yeah.
when you do, you're modeling for your child that it's okay to screw up. We
Yes, I
don't
think
have to
that's the
be
thing that
perfect.
sometimes South Asian parents have a hard time with, right? Like
Yeah.
just, yeah, like just saying it the way you said it, like thinking out loud and being like, look, this makes me uncomfortable, but this is what it's called. Yeah.
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 Yeah. You're allowed to be a human being. Your kids are going to appreciate you for being a human being.
Yes, and this kind of connects to our body safety conversation because they do say, and I mean, the research also shows like the Academy of Pediatrics will talks a lot about making sure children have the right body part names, and it's because it's a protective factor. It's a
Mhm.
protective factor when something happens that they're able to say, "Hey, this is what happened, and to this area of my body," and again, use the correct terminology, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I know like a lot of parents will tell me that during the preschool years, that's also where they start to like touch their private parts. And sometimes they do that in public spaces because it's very common
Oh,
because they're just out, they're like at an airport somewhere and they're like, oh, what is this? They're just waiting there for the plane. And so I've literally heard these stories, right? And so and the parent will be like, what are you doing? Because obviously that's like the initial reaction because they're just like, what is my child doing right now? When they see it, it's not okay. And so these are the types of messages that children receive. And so I just wanted to ask you more about that. Like when you see something like that in the moment, what do you do? Yeah.
yeah. I want to first say, like, shaming your child
Yeah.
for something that's so normal like that has long-term effects on their
Yeah.
sexuality as adults.
Hmm.
So, if you accidentally do that, again, like I mentioned, as parents, you're allowed to mess up. If you accidentally do that, having a conversation with your child and saying, "I'm so sorry. There's nothing wrong with what you were doing. You were
Hmm.
touching yourself. We don't do that in public,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We can do that in private when no one else is watching."
Yeah.
Right. That's something that we do in private. If you tell your child not to touch themselves, they're going to learn that masturbation is wrong.
Hmm.
They're going to become disconnected from their body,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Masturbation isn't unhealthy.
Hmm.
We just don't do it in public. We don't do it in front of other people. We do it in private.
Yeah.
Um, you
That's
know,
and that's great because I've talked to preschool teachers who've told me that they've worked with kids who maybe self-soothe in that way, and they've taught them like before nap time, like it happens under blankets,
yeah,
and it's because they were comfortable telling their parents, telling their teacher, right? Like this is what I like to do, and the teacher and the parent were able to come together with a plan for
yeah.
like this is how we're gonna do this and explain to them like how that happened. All right, so we're gonna take a pause now and we're gonna pause for a break. And when we come back, we're gonna talk about how to address some of these issues with middle schoolers and adolescents. Welcome back. We are listening to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. We're now going to take a look at the middle school years, what kids are getting exposed to, because I know middle school is like this big transition. You get exposed to lots of kids from different schools. You're a sixth grader with seventh and eighth graders, and these kids are coming back and they are going to have a lot of questions. If you've been open with them about this content from the very beginning, they're coming back and asking questions about some graphic content that they've been exposed to. They may, and this is like, again, the conversations that are happening with parents that are open with their kids, but also for parents that are not open with their kids. They're getting exposed to this and they may be Googling it because they know they can't talk to their parents about it. So, first of all, again, this is, a difficult topic that will make a lot of parents uncomfortable. So, how do we go about talking to the middle schoolers about some of this stuff?
First of all, I think that like middle schoolers are also learning um, about their bodies, and they're learning a lot of stuff from their friends, a lot of stuff from television, and they're not going to want to talk to you about it. You
Mhm.
know, they're just not going to want to talk to you about it. They're probably not going to come and ask you. They might ask you some questions, and I'll get to that in a second, but the bigger likelihood is they're going to be like, ew, mom, I don't want to talk to you about that, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
kind of that kind of thing. So I think for parents, just to keep the door open, you know, and I think I mentioned this before, just kind of like letting them know, like, your door is always open for them to come and talk to you about anything, anything at all. It can be sexual, it can be about dating, it
Mhm.
can be about, you know, your body, any questions you have. I may not always have the answers, but I'm always here to talk to you about them. I don't know everything. There's a lot of things that I also don't know, so the
Yeah.
door's wide open for you. The less reactive you are,
That's so
right?
true.
The
Yeah.
more calm you can stay and not act all weird, like, or
Yeah.
act all freaked out like your
Yeah.
dad freaked out. The more they're gonna know that this is normal. This is
Yeah.
just a normal part of life, a normal part of development. And it is. Sexuality is a normal part of life and development. It's who we are.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the reason that we have such like big emotional responses is because we don't have the tools. No one ever gave us any tools. So
Yeah.
how are we supposed to talk to our kids if no one talked to us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We don't know how to talk about sex. How are we going to talk to our kids about sex? We have to learn,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
And be
Gotta
having the responses
gotta
like
teach
you.
ourselves.
Yes, yes. And just having these conversations like we were having today, but just having these simple, short phrases, responses versus just, we don't talk about that. Why are you talking about that? That's
Yeah.
bad, that's wrong. And that goes down the shaming route to, hey, this is a sex education topic, and leaving it at that. They may not have any more questions.
Yeah, this is a sex education topic is a great thing to say.
You just talked about this before, but how kids are, they're going through puberty during the middle school years as well. And this is where they may be learning more about their sexual orientation. They may identify as, LGBTQIA. And so thinking more about if you've worked with South Asian families, what are you seeing as some of the challenges? What are some of the best practices for parents if a child is coming out to them?
Yeah, so I think best practices for parents is to unpack, if they can, some of the biases that they have around sexuality.
Yeah,
And the best way this can be done is by doing like a sexual history,
yeah,
assessment, like on yourself, like an inventory, like what did I learn? What kind of messages did I learn about sex? How did it impact me when I began dating, when I started, looking into marriage, when I started having sex with my partner? How
yeah,
did these messages that I received as a child, how did they impact me? Like, I think if parents start to do their own personal inventory around these topics,
yeah,
that's going to lead them into um, more insight about themselves and how they can be more helpful to their children. What do I wish someone had told me when I was a kid?
yeah. Oh,
Right?
great. Yes.
Yeah. What do I wish I knew when I started dating my husband or wife? When I
Yeah.
started being intimate with with my partner, what did I wish I knew? What was missing for me? Like
Yeah.
those kinds of, questions can really help us as adults understand what was missing for us,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you for that. Because I think that's going to just really provide so much insight into our biases, what's going on in our subconscious, why we say what we say in the moment, reacting to certain things that are happening in front of us. And then I also want to talk a little bit about teens and dating in general, because we know that, South Asian American families, like we talked about, don't necessarily want kids to date. They would rather go that arranged marriage route, like we started our conversation off with.
Yeah.
And I've heard from lots of parents, like, yeah, dating is such a time suck. Like, it just takes up so much time and energy. And, in high school, like, they really need to be focused in on their grades and, making sure that they get into college and all of that. But
Mhm.
then I also have heard from parents that, want their kids to date because they want to be there for their first heartbreak, because they're like, okay, it'll only get easier. The first one is really, really difficult. And I think for me, I just, I have a teenager too. I just wonder like how to prepare them when they are dating for the pros and cons of dating and dating life.
Yeah.
'Cause I see both. I see the pros of gaining all this experience, but I also see that it can take up all your time. You can lose all your friends when you're just with one person the whole time. And so, yeah, I'm wondering how you help navigate that a little bit.
I love what you just said
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Like literally you can say that. You can say that to your teenager.
Yeah.
Like, I see the pros and cons of dating as a teen, right? I see that it's probably good for you to have some experiences to learn about dating and to learn about yourself and how you relate to other people. Also, dating can take up so much of your time. It could distract you from your studies.
Yeah.
It could rip you apart from your friends.
Yeah.
It could take up all your emotional bandwidth, and it could be extremely emotionally,
Yeah.
damaging. And then on top of that, there's the sex piece. Like, you have to worry about having sex as a teenager. And like from my experience, teenagers do are very curious about sex,
Hmm.
but most of them aren't ready to have it.
Yeah.
Most of them don't feel like they have enough tools to actually navigate that. So I think what you actually just said was so profound, and leading with that, like, I don't have the answer for you, my child, my teenager,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether you should date or not. Of course, I want you to be safe and I want you to have good
Mhm.
experiences and I want to protect you from all the harm in the world, but I also know that I can't. And I
Yeah.
also know that, you're old enough to know how to make some good decisions for yourself. So I'm going to let you decide
Mhm.
whether or not you should date. And I'm going to leave this door wide open so that you can come and ask me anything.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to let you know if I think that you're doing something that's harmful to yourself, harmful for your future, damaging, like I'm going to be honest with you if I see any red flags, but I also want to trust you and trust you to make decisions for yourself. I
Yeah.
think we can't baby our teenagers, once they hit 14, 15,
Yeah.
16 especially, like 16 and 17-year-olds, they're gonna do what they want.
Yes. Yes.
You know, sometimes earlier. I don't have any kids of my own, but I have a lot of friends that have kids. And when I was a teenager, we started being like little adults at 16 and 17, but nowadays I feel like it's earlier.
It
Right?
is.
They
Yeah.
are like 14-year-olds acting like 20 to me in my mind, like acting like
Yeah.
23-year-olds, 14-year-olds acting like 24-year-olds. So
Yeah.
um we have to arm them with as much information
Yeah.
that we can and trust and support. Right? At the end of the day, if they know that they've got your support,
Mhm.
if something bad or scary happens, I can go and talk to mom about it because she's going to try to remain level-headed. She's not going to shame me or punish me or send me away somewhere. She's going to try to understand. And that's kind of the groundwork you want to lay.
Yes. So and I wonder like then um earlier on, because I know like okay, 16 and 17, they're definitely making their own decisions. Like earlier on, talking to them a little bit also about, we talked about healthy relationships early on in this episode, but also like what to look for in a healthy relationship, but also when are they ready to be intimate? Also like the birth control, and
Mhm.
all of that. Like, do we have those conversations with them as we start talking to them about dating so that they have some of those tools like in mind when they are making these decisions? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I would say have those conversations early.
Yeah.
Don't wait till they're 12.
Yes.
Start talking about things early. Like obviously, we talked about, the toddlers and the, preschool age kids touching themselves and things like that. So you're having these conversations often and early. By the time they're in the second, third grade, they're going to start like I don't know what age they're doing sex ed in school, but I feel like I didn't get sex ed till the sixth grade. But
Yeah.
I think we should be having these conversations with them in the first grade,
Yeah.
kindergarten.
Yeah.
Because also we want to be able to them to be able to protect themselves from, ill harming adults,
Yeah. Yeah.
ill-intentioned adults that they might come across when they're at school on the playground. If you are talking to them about sex, they're going to be able to have more knowledge
Yeah.
around what's appropriate and what's not. So, talking about birth control, do it when they're 8.
Yeah.
Like there's no harm in saying, when you have sex, if a girl has sex with a boy, when the penis goes inside the vagina, it causes pregnancy. You probably already know that because you learned that in sex ed. If not, that's the information. You can buy books and things like that. Also, um, we can prevent pregnancy
Yeah.
by, utilizing these things. There's these things called condoms that
Yeah.
you put it on the penis and it prevents the sperm from going inside the vagina. There's
Yeah.
also birth control, which is a pill that women can take that alters their hormones so they don't release an egg. So they, actually prevents them from getting pregnant. So letting them know that you're aware of those things is going to keep the door open for them. They're going to be like, I'm going to be able to talk to mom about these things, right? Mom's the one that told me about birth control. Now I'm 15 and I have this guy that I'm interested in and he's talking about sex. I need to go talk to mom real quick because I'm
Yeah.
pregnant,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. And welcome back. You're listening to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. So now that we're at the end, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about for parents that are listening today that have older, like teens, and they have been very hush hush. They haven't really talked to their teens about any of these topics, but now they feel like maybe they're listening to this and they feel like, hey, I want to say something so they know that I'm open to these conversations. Even if that door was maybe shut before, I want to open that door. So how should they start? Because they probably have to say something. And could it be as easy as, hey, I was listening to this podcast today, and they recommend that I let you know that you can come to me with any of these topics. So yeah, what do you think?
I love that. Of course, I mentioned this podcast, but if you're in that position and your child is 16, 17 and you've never said a word, I would lead with like, "Hey, I'm really sorry that I never talked about sex with you.
Yeah.
And I really wish I had. I just didn't have the tools myself."
Mhm.
Like accountability goes a long way. Kids love that. It's going to make your kid feel so seen. I didn't have the tools, and I want you to know that I want to do better. And so I'm going to keep the door open for you to come and talk to me. I want to know. So if you feel comfortable sharing things with me, I would love to be more a part of your life. And if you have any questions that no one has answered for you around sex, I'm here, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
let me know what you need. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. Like, but lead
Right.
with the apology.
Yeah.
Lead with like, I should have talked to you about this a long time ago and I didn't have the tools or I was embarrassed. No one talked to me about it. Like, be honest, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And then what themes are you seeing with the clients that you're working with today?
Yeah, so when I work with South Asian, and I will tell you a lot of them come in, the biggest thing I see is there's so much shame. So much
Mm-hmm.
shame around sex. There's a lot of cheating, a lot of male cheating, a lot of secrecy,
Hmm.
um, and a lot of um, because of all the shame and secrecy, disconnect with couples around sexuality, a lot of fear about around being intimate and vulnerable with their actual partners. So the shame that a lot of South Asians, that most South Asians are bringing into their intimate relationships are extremely detrimental. It's
Hmm.
causing a lot of psychological harm as well as physical harm.
Wow. That's a lot.
A lot. It's hard, and South Asians are, I would say, and part maybe because I am Indian myself, are the hardest population for me to work with because
Yeah.
they have so many walls and barriers up
Yes.
to making progress.
It's a shame causing, I guess, yeah, these blocks in intimacy. And this is what's causing some of like the cheating or like the going out and doing other things because you're trying to find this connection that you can't find with your partner. Um, is
There's
that okay?
There's that.
Yeah.
There's the belief that your partner doesn't want to have the connection. There's a belief that my sexuality is something to be ashamed of, so I don't want my partner to know.
So, and yeah, then that's definitely something in the South Asian community, just communicating, right? And especially with a topic like this, like that is very difficult. It's already hard to communicate as it is with
Yeah.
regular topics.
Yeah.
So I can see how this is just a huge, huge barrier.
Yeah. Once you've been shamed for your sexuality, whether it's done at home growing up or by a partner, it's really hard to come back from that. So if you are out there and you're listening to this, like definitely go seek the help of a sex therapist. Go with your partner if you're
Mhm.
ready. If you're not ready, go see one alone.
Yeah,
Because it's really important that you first understand that your sexuality is not something to be ashamed of.
yeah,
That
yeah,
your desires and the things that you want to do are a normal part of human sexuality and who we are as human beings. And that chances are your partner might even be interested in doing some of those things with you, but you've got to get rid of the shame first.
yeah. Wow, thank helping us as individuals, right? As parents, like really think through what's happening within the relationship first as couples and
Mhm.
then really like addressing that for ourselves like you had talked about that sexual inventory and
Yeah.
thinking about the history, what's happened to us in the past and now looking at the relationship that you're in and the challenges that you're seeing to then really moving forward to looking at how we can help our children with this, but we have to help ourselves first
Yeah.
and acknowledge everything that has happened in our lived experiences in childhood. I want to make sure our guests are able to connect with you and to find you. So, where can they reach you?
My website is moushumighosh.com.
Mhm.
You can reach me from there. My Instagram for my business for Los Angeles Sex Therapy is called Los Angeles Sex Therapy. Um, I am on TikTok currently, Moushumi Ghose, and so you can find me on
Yeah.
TikTok under my name now.
And
So
her content is so insightful, intriguing, just all the things that you put out there gives me a lot to think about. So I highly, highly recommend that. So thank you for listening, everyone. Next week, we're going to be talking to Shaylee Mehta, the author of Indians Don't Get Divorced, and we will continue the conversation there. Stay tuned. figure out like where, like how do they start these conversations?